Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today. My name is Kathy Kayaza, and I'm the Director of Career Curriculum within the Greene Center for Career Education and Connections here at the University of Rochester. I want to welcome you all to today's session, and most importantly, welcome you all to the University of Rochester community. We look forward to working with your student as well as with you and partnering together in your student's career education. Before we dive in, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, joining me today are a couple of my colleagues, Jody Wren, who is the Director of Advising in Career Communities, and Katie Ferruza, who oversees our first year initiatives, are joining me in the background here today, who will be answering questions as you submit them, and Jody will be facilitating some of the questions at the end when we open it live. We are also joined by a very special guest today, Adam Konowe, who not only is a University of Rochester graduate, but is also a parent of a current student. And he will be having a conversation with us here shortly about his experiences as a parent and how he has supported his daughter in her career preparation. If you are not familiar with the Zoom webinar platform, just a couple of notes for you to be aware of. You can go ahead and submit any questions as you're thinking of them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And like I said, my colleagues will be responding to those questions as they come in. And any questions that we want to address live, we'll be sure to save time at the end for us to respond to those. The chat feature will be turned off for this particular program. So without further ado, we're going to jump in here today. Just to give you an overview of how the Greene Center supports students. We are here to offer personalized connections for students to opportunities, to resources, and people to design their life. And this really happens through our advising, our programming, the courses that we teach, our partnerships with our campus community, as well as our alumni and our industry partners to help students develop connections between their academics and their career interests. But what do we mean by life design? So what is this concept? So this is really just a framework that we use to help students navigate the complexity that they have in front of them. They have so many different things to take advantage of as a University of Rochester student, and it can be both exciting and also overwhelming. And so life design boils down to just a couple of concepts that we want students to keep front of mind so that they can maximize their time and experiences at Rochester and help them in their career development and making decisions about the pathways they want to choose. So the first one is get curious. So what do we mean by that? So getting curious is really just about paying attention to the things that are all around them so that they don't miss opportunities that they may otherwise not have paid attention to. Talking to people is one of the best ways that students can really learn from others and from those who inspire them about how those individuals got to the places where they are. And so they can speak to folks within the University of Rochester community. That could be faculty, that could be other students, staff, but as well as our alumni. Our alumni have great stories about how they got to where they are. And we want students to really be leveraging those connections to find directions for the places they want to go. And trying things out. Trying stuff out is all about just learning by doing. It's about trying to see if something works for them and see what doesn't work for them. So as an example, if a student were to be interested in medicine and they wanted to shadow a physician, simply by trying something that is low commitment, low risk, there's not a huge investment in it. Just something by shadowing is allowing the student to dip their toe in the water to see, simply by observing a physician, is that really what the student thought it was going to be like? What do they enjoy about that experience? Or what do they think like, maybe that is not what I thought it was going to be? and maybe shifting to something else. And then telling your story. This is something we want students to practice throughout their entire time at the University of Rochester. And it allows them to tell the story about who they are and how their past experiences have shaped where they want to go next, and how they've had experiences to develop the skills and knowledge to prepare them for their next steps. So what I'm about to share with you are a few of the resources that we have available to help students really do those 4 things. So try things out, get curious, talk to people, tell their story. So I'm going to highlight just a few of those resources for you. The first one being our career communities. So our career communities are really structured in a way to allow students to explore the wide variety of industries and professions that are out there. And it's the way that we've organized our work in the Greene Center. So I'm going to share this short video with you and then share with you how students can connect with these career communities.
Career communities at the University of Rochester are a way for you to connect with people, information, and resources to explore your interests and connect to potential opportunities. Currently, we have 7 career communities: exploratory, marketing and creative, consulting and finance, engineering and applied sciences, healthcare, social good, and emerging tech. Each community has their own page on the Greene Center website detailing many ways to explore that community, related opportunities in Handshake, typical candidate profiles, recruiting timelines, and online industry resources. We encourage you to be curious and explore any and all career communities that align with your interests. When you pick a community or 2, you will receive customized information from the career community team, Greene Center career advisors who can help you navigate the field. Newsletters highlight relevant employer and alumni events, resources and programs, and upcoming internships and job deadlines. Signing up for a career community is easy. You just need to log into Handshake. Click on your name in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. In the drop-down menu, there will be a tab called Career Interests. By answering these questions, Handshake can customize and curate opportunities specific to your interests. Make sure to answer which University of Rochester career clusters best match your interests, as this allows the Greene Center to keep you informed of events and opportunities particular to your career community. And remember, if you have varying interests, we encourage you to join multiple communities. Finally, click on Save My Career Interests at the bottom. Congratulations, you have successfully joined a Rochester career community.
Great. So really what we encourage you to do as parents of our students is to encourage your student to sign up for any and all of the career communities that they may be interested in. We recognize that some students may have a very clear idea of the industries that they're interested in, but others may be exploring. So we encourage students to sign up to receive information for as many of the career communities they're interested in. I should mention that all incoming students will receive information about the career communities and Handshake. So I'll talk about Handshake in a moment. But they will receive this information in Blackboard as well as their incoming student checklist. So this is something that they will have heard about, and with your support and reinforcement, we'll remind them that this is a resource that they can take advantage of. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about our technology platforms. So Handshake being one of those that was just mentioned in the video. And Handshake is a really great technology platform that we specifically, in all of our tech platforms, we specifically selected because of their ability to customize the information that students receive based on their interests, and the ability to shift as the students' interests change and evolve and develop. So Handshake is a platform where students can go on and they can search for and apply directly for any internships and jobs that they may be interested in. It is where they can learn about opportunities such as virtual career fairs or other career-related programming. It's a place where they can schedule an appointment with a career advisor based on their needs. And again, receive information through newsletters based on their career communities of interest. So students can go right into the platform. They're already in there. They have access to it, and they can go to their profile and select those career clusters and select whatever career communities they want to receive information about. Another one of the platforms that we have available to all of our students is the Meliora Collective. And this is where students can go and talk to people. So we have thousands of alumni who are on this platform and ready to connect with our students. Students can go in, they can search by area of interest, they can search by, maybe they're looking for a certain someone who graduated with a certain major or somebody who works in a certain industry, and they can directly connect with those alumni. So you can kind of think of this as similar to LinkedIn, if you're familiar with LinkedIn, but it is exclusive to the University of Rochester community. So we're really proud of this platform and eager for students to connect with our wide range of alumni. Ways for students to try things out. So there are traditional ways for students to gain experience and exposure to various industries and professions, such as through internships. But we really want to help students recognize that a wide variety of outside of the classroom or in and out of the classroom experiences, as well as on and off campus experiences, can really develop students' career-related competencies and knowledge that's going to benefit them in their future careers. So those are things like being involved in campus clubs, or working in an on-campus work study job, or an off-campus job. It could be volunteering for an organization or completing a personal project. There are a wide variety of ways that students can gain experience and to develop critical skills that we know our employers and our graduate schools are looking for in college graduates. I also wanted to share with you very briefly our career outcomes dashboard. So this allows you to have access and your student to have access to information about where University of Rochester graduates go. If you want to take note of the URL at the top of the screen or otherwise take a picture of it, this allows you to go and see where do graduates go? So where did the class of 2019 or the class of 2020 go? Did they go on to graduate school? If so, what programs did they enroll in? Did they begin working in a professional career? If so, where across the globe is that happening? You can filter all of this based on your interests. So if you're interested in a particular degree, you can see what students from that degree program went on to do and where they are having an impact in the world. So I encourage you to play around with this platform based on your interests. Lastly, before we invite Adam to join us in conversation, I want to share some of the responses that the Greene Center has taken in light of the current pandemic and the disruption that it has had on the job market. So very quickly, we knew that this was going to be a significant factor on, let's say, the employment of our students. And so our team worked very quickly and very intentionally to ensure that our students did not miss out on opportunities to continue to gain experience and otherwise develop towards their careers. So just to highlight a few of those, we curated a list of virtual internships and projects that students who perhaps their internships got canceled could apply for and take advantage of for this summer. So we have students who are currently working in virtual internships where they otherwise couldn't work in person, and are also connecting with employers on projects in a virtual setting. We also have hosted a wide variety of digital videos and sessions like the one we're in. Our executive director, Joe Testani, has hosted some Ask Me Anything episodes that he has opened up not just to students, but the entire U of R community. So those are things as parents and families you can take advantage of as well. And we also produced a wide variety of videos that students could access on demand to continue to learn and take advantage of career education resources so that they were continuing to develop their skills. We also spent some time with our graduating seniors. So we knew, based on our survey of our upcoming graduates or recent graduates, who from that graduating class was still searching for opportunities. So maybe they were still looking for employment. And our team of advisors reached out to every single one of those students in order to best support them and identify personalized connections with alumni, and identified opportunities such as job opportunities to apply for, all based on the students' interest in areas they wanted to apply for. So those students have really appreciated those efforts, and I think really demonstrates again that personalized connection that we're offering to students to help them meet their goals. So ultimately, what our hope is that career is everywhere across the entire University of Rochester, and not just there when a student decides that they're ready to access it, not just there during the senior year when they're starting to think about, oh gosh, I'm graduating, what do I do next? But it really becomes integrated into their entire University of Rochester experience. So we work very closely with all of our campus partners, with our alumni, with our industry partners to ensure that career is sort of everywhere, that the connections that they can make between their academics, their co-curricular activities, all the things that they're doing are related to their career development, and we're helping them draw those connections out. So without further ado, what I want to do is spend the next portion of our session really talking about how parents and families can be a part of that ecosystem of career education support. So I'm going to invite Adam to turn his camera and his microphone on here. And I want to thank you and welcome you, Adam, for joining us here today.
Sure.
I'm going to talk about a couple of quick ways that parents and families can support their students' career development. And then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for you to share your experience with us.
Sounds great.
Great. So one of the best ways that parents and families can support their student in their career development, and can do this even immediately within the first year, is asking their student questions. And oftentimes we kind of think of the traditional, what are you going to do with that major? But we really want to flip that on its head a little bit and start to ask students to think about, what are they curious about? What inspires them? What classes are they enjoying the most? Because what that starts to do is help the student self-reflect about, what are those things that I seem to be enjoying the most? Who are the people that seem to inspire me the most? And how can I connect with those opportunities to gain a little bit more insight to help me determine where I want to move from there? We also want to encourage students to connect with people, talk to people. So one of the ways you can help them do that is to help them make connections with people in your own networks. Perhaps you have family members who work in areas that your student might be interested in. Perhaps you have colleagues that you work with in your own organization who you could connect your student to. And those are great ways to help students kind of leverage the networks that we all have. And if that is something that maybe you're not comfortable with, remember, we have the University of Rochester community. So that is all of our networks right now that we encourage you to lean on and take advantage of. And if you need help with that, we can certainly help you do that, whether that's through the Meliora Collective or other ways. You can also volunteer. So I know Adam's got some great experience here. But you could volunteer to mentor a student. You could volunteer to pass on students' resumes to perhaps a hiring manager, or maybe you know of an opportunity or an opening at your organization that you could let us know about. And those are great ways to support our University of Rochester students and their career success. And then I just want to let you know about the Parents Buzz, which, if you're not familiar with this, is a monthly news communication that comes out from the U of R to the parents community, and just sharing information and news across the university. We always have, the Greene Center always has a submission within the Parents Buzz every month with either tips or questions you can ask your student, or information about upcoming opportunities, deadlines that you may want to make your student aware of. So this is just a sampling of the ways that you can engage with your student in their career development. So with that, Adam, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you, and if I missed anything, feel free to interject that as well. But in general, can you share with our audience the ways in which you have supported your daughter's career development at the University of Rochester?
Sure, Kathy. And I think the first bullet that you touched on here is really, really important, and one that we probably don't spend enough time thinking about, which is, I think when we talk to students about careers, it can get very intimidating and almost adversarial for them faster than we as parents want, right? You know, well, what are you going to do with that degree, or where are you going to get an internship, as opposed to asking questions that are less direct, but perhaps more insightful, right? And so, you know, with my daughter, and I also teach at the university level here in Washington, D.C., I try to help both my child and my students think about what interests them, right? So if you start with what are they excited about, it could absolutely be something in a class, part of their major, part of their minor. At Rochester, we have these things called clusters that you as parents will learn about. They're like mini minors that provide diversity through a student's major, through a student's education, regardless of major. And the point is for them to start thinking about what makes them them, right? What interests them, what makes them unique, and let them start to think about what kinds of organizations touch those areas of interest and skill, rather than, I want to go work for Apple. Well, a lot of people probably want to go work for Apple, but that's not necessarily the only end game for somebody who has a given interest in telephony or multimedia technology, or, you know, computer science or artificial intelligence, right? There may be a number of stops along the way that are eminently more achievable, if perhaps not quite as, you know, carrying the name recognition of an Apple, but gets them to that ultimate goal. So if we start by having a conversation about what interests the student and what gets them excited, as opposed to putting up this sort of holy grail, you know, that we want them to shoot for, and if they come anywhere short of that, then somehow they feel inadequate, then I think it allows for a much more iterative process. And it's sort of like when they were looking at schools, right? I mean, so they've just gone through the process of choosing Rochester, but they, you know, had a number of other schools that no doubt they were looking at. And the goal wasn't to say to them, hopefully during these last few years when they were high school students, you know, what is your dream school? Because as 16 and 17-year-olds, a lot of them don't necessarily know how to make that decision. But if you took them along the path, which I'm sure you did because they've ended up at Rochester, of saying, what is the kind of environment that I think I will thrive in? Campus size, you know, urban versus suburban versus rural, you know, specialist university versus liberal arts college versus broad university. These sorts of broader, open-ended explorations probably led them to some options, and Rochester may have been one of them, that weren't in their original decision set. And I think from a career perspective, that's the same thing we want to try to do, is help them explore a number of options, and those options might not be direct. So just, it's a really long answer, but in the short answer that I'll say with regard to Celia, my daughter, for this summer, in a summer when, let's face it, a lot of internships didn't happen because of COVID, my approach to her was to say, okay, you're an environmental studies major. What interests you within environmental studies? She talked about hydrology. I said, great. Let's look at different kinds of organizations that touch hydrology and marine science. And one of the tactics that we ended up using was to actually look at the publishers, the media outlets, magazines and websites that are specific to the marine and hydrology industry. And she reached out to them because she's a very good writer. She's got a little bit of experience in journalism, but that's not her major. And she ended up landing an editorial internship with a marine technology magazine. And she's writing article after article this summer for them. And she's going to have a published book of articles when the summer is over. But if you had said to her, or if I had said to her, you know, do you want to be an environmental journalist? The answer would have been, well, no. But is this a step that's going to help her? Yeah, because she's going to be exposed to content. She's going to be exposed to industry players. It's going to really help her with her LinkedIn profile and such. And she's going to end up with a bunch of pieces of written work that she can show as portfolio pieces. So I think it's that sort of indirect path that we can find, but we only find it by asking the kinds of open-ended questions that Kathy talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adam. I'm so glad that you could share that story with our audience, and how you've really helped Celia find success in a really challenging time. I also really appreciated that you mentioned sort of this iterative process in career development and this nonlinear pathway, because that's really the reality is more often than not, careers are not linear. And it really is. And that's what life design is all about. It really is just sort of figuring it out as you go and trying it out by doing it. And that can lead to unexpected avenues, but also get you closer to the things that you are interested in and want to do. And then
yeah, the late Steve Jobs, in his very famous commencement address to Stanford University, that's on YouTube, folks can go look at it, tells the story about taking a calligraphy class in college. And at the time, he saw absolutely no potential value in learning calligraphy. But later on, when he created the first Mac, it was that experience with calligraphy that led him to Macs having, you know, all these really great, you know, proportional fonts and everything else that we now know that every computer has. And so, you know, he talks about that you can't connect the dots forward, you can only connect the dots backwards. And that's a really good example. So while internships and things like that have a much greater role than they did when I was an undergraduate at Rochester, I encourage parents to take a very sort of holistic approach to the conversations about career, because I think, again, the options are wider than you think, but you have to sort of, to me, get at what makes the student unique, and then you focus on those things as opposed to having them apply to 500 things, and then you get a much higher rate of being turned down, as opposed to focusing more upfront on the research and then applying to a fewer number of organizations, but probably getting a much better success rate.
Absolutely. And that goes back to and connects with the telling your story piece really well, is knowing yourself, knowing those questions, the answers to the questions you mentioned earlier about, what are the things that really inspire you? What is it about, environmental studies that you're interested in? Well, there's a particular area, right? So being able to convey that in a way that connects to the places that students are applying to makes it much more meaningful, impactful. So that brings us to our next question, actually. So since our audience here are parents and families of incoming students, in what ways can families support their students' career development within the first year? And why is it important to do that so early on in their academic education?
I think they could do a lot, and obviously this year is going to be an unusual year on campus, and a lot of the things that we do, we're going to have to do differently, and there might be some things that we don't do quite at all. But I think, but parents just expressing a lot of interest in students in terms of what classes they're taking, what subjects are being taught, even in a time of COVID, how those topics are being taught, in either a fully online or perhaps a hybrid mode. And then looking for ways, especially if a student has a given interest and that interest isn't being fully satiated through the class, perhaps because of COVID, looking for these alternative things. I'm always looking for content as somebody who used to work in journalism. I'm always looking for interesting content, and I'll share that with my daughter if I think it relates to her interest in environmental science. Now, I am not an environmental science graduate, and so I could absolutely get it wrong, but at least by looking at things myself as a parent and expressing interest in the sorts of things that my daughter is studying, it provides an opportunity to have a conversation, even if my daughter turns around and says, yeah, well, that's not really on topic. I can say, well, okay, well, tell me why, or tell me what you're reading instead, right? I mean, again, it's an opening. Getting it right is not so much as important as showing the interest, right? It's like with a cover letter. If a student applies to my company and sends me an application, and in their cover letter, they've done effectively copy, paste, send, and it's the same generic cover letter they use to a lot of people, that shows a lack of rigor and interest, right? But if they've tried to understand who I am by looking me up on LinkedIn or whatever, they may or may not get it all right, and that may dissuade some of them from doing it. But my point is, they've shown interest, and that already is worthwhile. And so again, getting back to the parent side, I think the best thing you can do is, understand what they're studying, show interest in it. If you can find some content that allows you to continue the dialogue, so it's not just, how are your classes this week? Oh, my professor's boring. Gee, I'm really sorry to hear that. You can have a different kind of conversation than that. And that may then lead to you sort of seeing what kinds of organizations touch the content that your student is interested in. And that's the thing, like there's sort of these circles that radiate out from any given topic, right? And I'll go back to the Apple example. There are a lot of people that would love to go work for Apple because Apple is cool. But there probably aren't a lot of people who thought to apply to the kinds of companies that make all the different pieces, whether it's the battery or the screen or whatever, that go into an iPhone. Well, those companies are in the same industry as Apple. Those companies are just as important. They're just farther up the chain. And if you can get into one of those, which almost invariably is easier than getting into Apple, who's to say you won't get into Apple down the road, right? It's sort of like a shot in pool where you go off multiple banks of the pool table to sink a given ball. You don't have to necessarily go the direct way, which is often the hardest way. So as parents, again, my biggest advice is get involved in their content to the extent that students will allow. And it doesn't have to just be about their major. If they have minors, sometimes minors end up being where students, find the most amount of satisfaction, and in some cases their first career. Even clusters, which are 3 courses grouped around a common theme that we take for distribution reasons at Rochester now. Again, there's some fascinating stuff in there. And encouraging your student to be open-minded and with their own academics can lead to a lot of stuff. And then the other thing I'll say is, on the co-curricular side, that is what students do outside of class, again, tremendous opportunity at Rochester, and things can connect. So my daughter became interested in WRUR, which is our over-the-air radio station at Rochester. We actually have 2, one that's streamed and one that's FM. And so she got involved in WRUR. That led to her taking a cluster in audio and music engineering, which again is not her major, but it's going to provide her with some excellent, computer-based skills. That led her to become a student member of the National Press Club here in Washington. That student membership of the National Press Club led her to a summer internship last year, where she came with me to Paris and covered the Paris Air Show, which is the biggest event in aviation. And writing at the Paris Air Show ultimately led to this summer's internship in environmental science and marine technology. Again, a very indirect path, but it was harnessing those early interests that led us, to, effectively let those dots to connect in a way that I certainly couldn't have foreseen 12 or 15 months ago.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's so important to really leverage the open curriculum at Rochester, right? I mean, that is really what it's there to do,
Yeah.
is to help students explore. And often a very frequent reason why students choose the University of Rochester, because we don't have the strict requirements, and it really embraces exploration. So one of the best ways that
Yeah.
students can take advantage of that is to actually just take a wide variety of courses, because it exposes them
Yeah.
to new ideas, new ways of thinking, new things that they may never have even considered before, and it does help further inform sort of the directions that they want to take.
Yeah, and it can really give your students a head start if you parlay it properly. In this, especially for students that are incoming first years, most of their peers at other universities are going to be knocking out gen ed requirements. And we don't do that. Every course that a student takes at Rochester, they are taking because effectively they want to take it, not because they have to take it.
Mm-hmm.
It's either part of their major, part of a minor, part of a cluster, of which there are hundreds of clusters across the three great schools of learning: natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. And it has eliminated the situation where you have students in classes that don't want to be there being taught by professors who know that the students don't want to be there either, right? I mean, it really has done amazing things. When we did away with the foreign language requirement, our number of foreign language students at Rochester went up, not down. And the answer is because they were doing it because they wanted to take it, not because they had to. And so, encouraging students to talk to their professors is another important thing I think parents can do, because the way undergraduate students relate to professors is fundamentally different than the way high school students relate to their teachers. Even in a really great high school, whether it's a small public high school or a private school, where you may have had a more collegial relationship than might be traditionally expected, the reality is a college campus is just different. It's different than high school. The students are of a different age. They're in a different phase of their life. And having students get to know their faculty, going to their office hour if they have them, which again, under COVID-19 may be a little bit different this year, but at least interacting with the faculty digitally where they can't interact with them in person, provides opportunity. It might be an opportunity to work on a research project. And at Rochester, research forms a very broad scope. It's not merely in STEM fields. It's across the humanities and social sciences as well. It might lead to an opportunity in a class that a student does really well to be a teaching assistant or TA in a future semester, which is a great experience, and especially if that student is going on to graduate school. TAing at the undergraduate level is an excellent way to build experience. It may be that faculty member doesn't have a research opportunity themselves, but knows somebody in another institution or outside of academia. So, again, you don't necessarily know where those conversations are going to go, but you don't have to. All you have to do is encourage your student to show enthusiasm with their professors, and that enthusiasm will pay off in all likelihood in one form or another. If nothing else, then they should be able to get a really good letter of recommendation for a potential internship.
That's great. That's excellent advice, and I appreciate you sharing that. It's certainly something that we try to do as career advisors, but oftentimes it helps to hear it from others. So thank you for encouraging the development of those relationships, particularly with faculty. I was hoping that you might share some of how you have engaged and volunteered with, our greater University of Rochester student population. If you could talk through some of the specific examples of hosting students and whatnot, because I think that would be valuable for our audience here.
Sure. I mean, the first thing I would like fellow parents to know is that the Greene Center is very tied into the university. I have seen institutions elsewhere where the Career Center is like, the health center. If you need it, it's there. But you might never set foot in it. And that's not the way Joe Testani, especially under his leadership in recent years, has run the Greene Center. It definitely is very much a reflection of the university itself. Joe has brought in a big emphasis on data and applying data science to the career process, which is, I think, a very Rochester thing to do. We love to measure. We love to measure things in all ways, as parents saw on the dashboard that Kathy shared earlier. But yeah, so there is an opportunity for alumni like myself, separate from my role on Parents Council, to be involved with students at large. And it manifests itself in a number of ways. First of all, in a non-COVID world, we will often come back to campus and give presentations. I did one about a year and a half ago where I came on campus and talked about my career, which is in marketing communications, primarily for aerospace and defense companies, and talked about how one gets into a career first in journalism and then in marketing without majoring in either journalism or marketing at Rochester. I was a political science and history double major, in fact. So there's an opportunity for alumni to come back and talk on campus. One of my fellow members of the network leadership cabinet here in Washington, he comes on campus every year. He's a national security lawyer. And so he comes on campus every year and talks to students about what it takes to build and maintain a security clearance if you want to go into that from either a business development career role or as an engineer or something like that. Obviously, a lot of jobs in this country, especially, involved in the government, require security clearance. Mark is an expert in that. And so he comes on campus and helps 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds think about things that you wouldn't normally think about in your late teens and early 20s, but they could be absolutely pivotal in your role, depending on what you hope to do after Rochester. We also have an opportunity to interact with students, as Kathy said, through the Meliora Collective, which really is useful as almost like a private version of LinkedIn for students to join different discussion groups, to talk with alumni. And that's something, of course, that can happen regardless of the pandemic because it's purely digital. And then, frankly, one of my favorite events, and one that the university has done for many years around the country, is something called SAM. So it's Student Alumni Networking Night. And it's done in a series of cities around the country. Used to be in the winter. More recently, we were trying to move it to the summer. Obviously not this summer because of COVID. But what it allows is a night where students that are either here in Washington, but this happens in other cities too, either because they're home and they live here, or they're visiting Washington on a career center trip to see, for example, how government and lobbying firms and things like that work, or in New York, how the financial community works, for example. But timed with that, the university hosts this Student Alumni Networking Night, which is an opportunity for alumni from different career paths to have a very informal meeting with students. It's almost like a cocktail hour kind of arrangement. And it allows the students to just talk very freely in a very low stress environment to alumni who are in careers that might interest them. And it's a great way for us to give back as alumni. And of course, it's a great way for students, some of whom we would probably otherwise not know, to get to see us in our home cities, which may be theirs as well, or like I said, they may be visiting. So sometimes we come to the university, sometimes the university comes to us, and of course, through the collective, we can meet on neutral grounds.
Great, thank you so much. And of course, thank you for being so involved and engaged in the support of all of our students, because that really is our goal at the Greene Center, is to ensure the career success of each and every one of our students at Rochester. So we've reached a point in time now where I'd like to open it up to audience questions, either for myself or you, Adam. So Jody, if you could help us out with any of the questions that have come in, we'll address those now.
Absolutely. So yeah, please definitely send in questions if you have them. Thank you both, Kathy and Adam, for a very informative conversation. I have to admit, Adam, that I am a first-time parent of an incoming first-year student. So I appreciate the advice, and we may come back to a specific question I have for you as well, depending on the questions we have here. But the first question is for you, Kathy. Thinking about how students can engage with career services. So beyond the platforms, what are the other primary avenues for connections?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the platforms are an easy, convenient way to connect, but it's not the only way. Some of the other examples that I can offer, one is through our courses. We actually offer and offer courses for students to register for, one of them actually being a life design course. And this is offered to first year and sophomore students. So perhaps your student would be interested in registering for it. It's a 1-credit course. It teaches those 4 concepts that we talked about, the get curious, try stuff, talk to people. We practice those things as a class. We give students opportunities for hands-on activities, and we're doing it now actually in a virtual setting, so we can replicate that both in a virtual setting what we would have done in person. And it's a wonderful opportunity for students to have a dedicated space and time to really reflect on some of the things that we talked about today. So the course is one of those. Some other ways that students can connect, in addition to the platforms you said, Jody?
Yeah, so I think they're thinking like, one-on-one advising, collaboration hours.
Oh, right. So career advising, students can schedule their appointments with a career advisor, but we have a team of advisors ready to connect with students, to have one-on-one advising appointments. They can come in, speak with an advisor, whether, if it's in person, if we're able to do that, or virtually. We're having all of our appointments right now in a virtual setting, so we can come on in Zoom and have a one-on-one conversation with students, and really help identify what the unique needs of the individual are. And then we also have programs that we offer for students as well, where students can take advantage of. We're actually doing a Life Design Summer Institute program, where we have students who are convening once a week to talk about their career development and the things that they're doing this summer to prepare them.
Great. Quick follow-up question to that, Kathy. There's a question around if incoming students are going to be assigned a career counselor and a college advisor, and do they work together in terms of curricular planning, or just how do they complement each other?
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited to answer this question because every student will be assigned a college advisor, and every single one of our career advisors in the Greene Center is also a college advisor. So many of our advisors will actually be assigned to students, but overall, even if one of the college advisors is not working directly in the Greene Center, we do all of our training all together. So we are actually incorporating many of the things that we just talked about together. Life design, how do we ask questions to support students in their exploration, taking advantage of the open curriculum at Rochester. We're doing that collectively as an entire cohort of college advisors. So students will immediately get access to that framework, and can begin to engage. And then of course, if students need further and more in-depth career-specific advising, then they can connect with the Greene Center for that.
Great. Thank you. I think, it's important. I think we talked a lot about the platforms, but the personalized connections definitely come through one-on-one as well. And I also, I guess I can share that we haven't quite launched it yet. We're launching it tomorrow, but a Slack channel. So for those quick questions in a virtual world, we'll be launching that as well. So for incoming students that prefer those types of opportunities, we will have that as well for students to ask questions. Adam, so I've got a question for you here. When your daughter was a first year, so maybe put yourself back, is there one thing that you wish you would have done differently, or one thing that you learned through that experience that you could share with some of these incoming first year parents and families?
I think really first year for an undergraduate student is so inherently disorienting. It is so different from what most students have any sort of perception of it. I think the challenge is to keep them, and on the one hand, focused on what they think they want to do, but don't let them close off the avenue too quickly on some things that they might try experimenting with. And it's a balance, right? Because every student is different. Some of them can, multitask, in terms of their interests very well. Others really need to focus on a few things. There were some things that Celia didn't do as a freshman, as a first year, that I think, in retrospect, that she did catch up and do later on as a sophomore or junior, whether it was, something academically or more importantly on the co-curricular side. That had she started a year earlier, I would have recommended. I think, but I don't think it was anything to her detriment. I think, but being willing to sit down and meet with somebody at the Career Center, even as a first year, I think is really important. To understand the services that are there, to start to be able to just talk about what interests you as an 18-year-old or however old that student may be, I think is really important, because it gets back to this notion of self, right? As adults, we all know that we're all kind of CEO of me incorporated, right? We all know that we have a brand and we have to try to sort of project that brand, whether we work for ourselves or work for a big company. But at the end of the day, if we can't articulate who we are and what makes us unique, we can't count on the rest of the world to do that for us. Students need to be able to start to do that relatively early on, and they shouldn't think that they can't do that until they declare their major or until they're ready to apply for their first internship. I think getting used to, as a first year student in particular, getting used to talking, especially face-to-face with adults, which students of this generation, a lot of them aren't necessarily as well versed in, because they're used to dealing with their peers, let alone anybody else, in a digital way, I think is really important, because it allows them to start to get used to breaking down a barrier before that barrier becomes too set. And those are the kinds of barriers that we all know as people in various careers you can't afford to have. And even if you're a relatively natural introvert, which I am, when you have to start to be a little more extrovert. So I think my message to myself 3 years ago with Celia, and therefore my message to the parents today of incoming students, is don't think it's ever too soon to start this. But again, try to do it in a way that it doesn't seem intimidating, because students, regardless of age, can shut down pretty quickly if they feel like something is become a parental mandate. And really, we don't mean it as a parental mandate. We mean it as an enabler for all sorts of things, many of which none of us can predict. And that's the beauty of a school like Rochester, is it rewards the kind of student that has initiative. It's not a school that's very good at saying no. It's a very good school at saying yes to those students that go out and say, I'm going to go do something unusual, right? That's why we have the Take 5 program. That's why we have scholarships in things like the humanities. That's why we have an opportunity for an entrepreneurial project. Like, we have all these different opportunities that are there for the taking, but students have to have A, the knowledge that they're there, and B, the confidence that could be them, if that's what they want. And so I think that's the kind of conversation to have with your incoming student.
Great. Thank you, Adam. I think that's really helpful. I mean, I think there's always good intention behind parents saying, like, go to the Greene Center or go to the Career Center. But sometimes, it's hard for the student who's like, I don't know if that's what I want. So finding that balance.
Yeah. It sounds like you're sending them to their room, and we're not.
Right.
Like, it's not detention. It's not, there's no negative connotation, just like there's no negative connotation in getting any other form of assistance. And I want to say help, because even help has a certain connotation to it, but this is about enabling things. This is not about fixing something, right? Nothing is broken. Literally, the world is sort of, at a student's door at a school like Rochester. And so what we want them to do is realize that all of these assets are there for them to use, and the better they make use of them, the better they're going to do, and probably the better you as a parent are going to feel about the value of the investment you're making, which is, something that we're entitled to feel as parents, regardless of what university we're supporting. So, but I think students need to understand, and parents need to present it in the right way, that this is about opportunity. This is not about being remedial in any way.
I like that. It's about opportunity. I think that frame there is very helpful. Kathy, I think we've covered all the questions that have been sent in this far, so I'm going to kick it back over to you.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the questions that came in, and everyone's eagerness to really partner in their students' career development. I really appreciated the conversation here. I think, as I said before, we're really committed to supporting each and every one of our students' career development and preparation. And I think another theme that came from our conversation today is helping remove barriers, right? So it's not about sending students to the Greene Center because of its detention. It's about the opportunity and removing barriers that may be in the way of connecting them to those opportunities. So that the access is something that we keep top of mind. Any final words, Adam, that you have as we depart from today's session for our families of our incoming students?
Yeah, I would just say, well, first of all, congratulations, and again, welcome to the community. Rochester has an amazing, not only Parents Council, but alumni network. I'm proud to lead the Washington, D.C. chapter as co-chair. I also sit on the National Alumni Board. The university is committed to your students' success. Under our new president, Sarah Mangelsdorf. Great things were happening before COVID. Great things will happen after COVID. And in the meantime, we will get through that. This coming semester and possibly year will feel a little bit different than what we all perhaps expected, but know that a lot of work has gone into making this the best year it can be, including by the folks at the Career Center. The infrastructure is in place, and you can feel very good that your student is going to have an amazing year, despite the challenges that are present for all of us.
Sure. Well, thank you again, Adam, for joining us and sharing your story with our audience. And thank you, everyone, for connecting for an hour today. And we look forward to welcoming you to the U of R community and welcoming and working with your student. Take care, everybody. Thanks again.